The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs revealed that in the first 9 months of 2021, almost 61,000 people were internally displaced in Colombia due to the ongoing violence in the country. Relatives of Chile's political prisoners have begun a hunger strike as they await a vote on the general pardon bill scheduled for November the 2nd. An Israeli planning committee approved on Wednesday about 3,000 new illegal settled units in the occupied West Bank, a move denounced even by its ally, the United States. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs revealed that in the first 9 months of 2021, almost 61,000 people were internally displaced in Colombia due to the ongoing violence in the country. This is more than double the number of people displaced in 2020, which was 27,000. Meanwhile, with the exception of 2013 and 2020, the number of people confined this year due to control by organized armed and criminal groups over the population is the highest in 10 years, at almost 51,000. The report also underlines the serious humanitarian crisis in the Pacific region of the country, where different emergencies caused by violence, armed conflict, and natural disasters converge. Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, this Wednesday endorsed the tribunal that emerged from the peace agreement that disarmed the former FARC guerrillas in Colombia for its progress in the investigations of the worst crimes of the conflict. The statements came after Khan met with the president of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, Eduardo Cifuentes. The court has been the target of criticism from right-wing politicians and also social sectors that oppose the 2016 peace agreement and consider it too lax with former guerrillas. Current conservative president Iván Duque has been one of its biggest opponents. In 2019, he proposed reforming jurisdiction, but the ordinary justice system rejected the initiative. The court is investigating several members of the Colombian military, some of them comrades, for having executed over 6,000 civilians between 2002 and 2008 in what is known as the false positive scandal, whereby civilians were killed as presented as guerrilla deaths in combat in exchange for benefits.
Is that HEP must be supported. HEP must continue to be given the space to do its work. And I'm very pleased that I think the current government, the various actors, civil society, and of course the work of HEP themselves are working in a very positive way, in a way that was intended. Important and critical progress has been made. The journey has not been completed, but I would simply urge all of you to continue to have the determination and the belief that the structures put in place, HEP is well funded by the government, it has a constitutional status, that give HEP space to do its work.
For the ICC prosecutor and the president of the Special Peace Jurisdiction to tell 9 million victims that there will be justice is very important for the ICC and the GEP, and we are doing it today in Colombia.
Now we move on to the Caribbean. Cuba's Communist Party has presented evidence of the links between the organizers of an anti-constitutional march called for November, terrorists and think tanks that promote political subversion against the country from the United States. The party's Central Committee presented a recording of a conversation between Junior Garcia, one of the main figures behind the so-called demonstration, and Ramon Saúl Sánchez, who was a member of the U.S.-based terrorist organizations such as Omega 7, Alpha 66, and the National Front for the Liberation of Cuba, among others. Further evidence was also presented on the links that exist between the alleged organizers of the march and U.S. institutions and government officials. As part of the media show around the protest, it was called on the same day that Cuba will fully reopen its borders to tourists. The President of the National Assembly of Haiti, Joseph Lambert, has joined for dismissal of Prime Minister Ariel Henry in the midst of protests against fuel shortages and after the main gun boss also demanded Henry's resignation. Lambert said he believes a new transition government should be installed until elections can be held next. The President of the National Assembly of Haiti expressed that his government doesn't represent what we need now. We need a large consensus with all sectors. No one will be able to govern Haiti without a larger consensus.
The G9 members has a family. We challenge everyone that someone has been kidnapped in the G9 areas under our control. Proof that we are kidnapping. I will hand over all my weapons and I will bring justice.
Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez declared at the commemoration of the 11 years of Néstor Kirchner's departure that he will continue working to win the elections next November 14th in the country.
Let's go with all the strength we always had. We cannot fail, Néstor. We have to convince every Argentine because the Argentina that Néstor intended for himself is still pending. I have the absolute certainty that my destiny is to finish the task that Néstor began and Cristina followed, and the task that the three of us have is to make a just, free and sovereign Argentina. In November.
Likewise, the president affirmed that his labor in the face of the pandemic was to take care of every citizen to stop the COVID-19 spread.
The only thing we privilege is the health of the people. It was taking care of each Argentine, preserving that the contagion does not spread at great speed and meanwhile recovering a health system that was absolutely destroyed. And we did it. And obviously hurts each of the victims that the pandemic has been taken. But all of us who are here, governors, intendants, the president, deputies, senators, we all have the intimate peace of mind that no Argentine was missing a vet. No Argentine was missing a hospital that will open the doors to be cared for. The only thing
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Relatives of Chile's political prisoners have begun a hunger strike as they await a vote on the general pardon bill scheduled for November the 2nd. The participants informed that the hunger strike will continue until next Tuesday, when the Senate is due to vote on the bill. Spokespersons for the National Assembly of Relatives of Political Prisoners explained that the move seeks to call on the opposition sectors to approve the bill once and for all and allow the release of youths who were arrested and imprisoned over 2 years ago as part of the state repression of anti-government protests. The demonstrators recalled that in 40 cases, those charged were acquitted, while in others, the charges were dismissed for the lack of insufficient evidence to continue the investigations.
My name is Rosemary Paez, and I belong to the group that supports political prisoners, and we are here at the Copper Confederation starting a hunger strike so that the pardon bill can be passed on November 2nd of this year. We made this decision because we consider it is unjust that these youth continue to be held without trial for more than 2 years and without any response and political solution so that they can be released. We make a call for you to show solidarity with us and to accompany us and help us to promote and support the general pardon bill because it is the only option for the youth to be released and to be able to embrace their families again.
And Thursdays is the second day of a U.S. appeal hearing against Julian Assange for his extradition at the UK's High Court. Today's hearing could see Assange finally receive some justice or being extradited to the U.S., where he could face up to 175 years in prison. U.S. authorities told British judges on Wednesday that if they grant the extradition of WikiLeaks founder on espionage charges, he could serve any U.S. prison sentence he receives in his native Australia as part of an alleged assurances. These supposed guarantees were offered after a prior extradition ban in January under mental health and suicide risk reasons. With no solid arguments, an attorney for the U.S. government denied that Assange's mental health was too fragile to withstand the U.S. judicial system, downplaying the diagnosed severity of Assange's conditions.
The truth about Iraq, the truth. That is what we have done to this person who told us the truth about Afghanistan, the truth about Iraq, the truth about surveillance, and revealed the incredible levels of secretive power held by the United States and indeed many other governments around the world. In a different place, in a different denomination, in a different country, he would be hailed as a whistleblower who told the truth about dangers we are all facing. Well, he told us the truth about the dangers the whole world is facing, and I think we should bear witness to Julian's bravery and his determination and demand two things. One, that he's not removed under any circumstances to the United States, and secondly, that he be released from Belmarsh so he can continue his life with his partner, with his children, and recover from the terrible ordeal that he's been through.
And the partner of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange told a crowd of supporters outside the UK's High Court that a decision to extradite him to the United States will be unthinkable.
Who took political asylum for fear of the political persecution that the US was taking against him, for fear of torture and inhumane and degrading treatment, for fear of being put in prison for the rest of his life, for exposing the crimes of the US government. And then he was kidnapped. He was kidnapped in the end on the 11th of April 2019. He was arrested by British officials, and immediately the US indictment was revealed. So what is the involvement of the UK government in Julian's political persecution here?
And the World Health Organization announced that it will monitor the A4.2 lineage of the Delta variant of COVID-19 virus, each time more present in global disease contagions. The health authority indicated that since last July, a considerable increase in the transmission was the sequence. The lineage shows 3 additional mutations regarding the original Delta variant. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused almost 5 million deaths since it was detected at the end of 2019. In total, more than 244 million cases have been accounted according to the WHO. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. An Israeli planning committee approved on Wednesday about 3,000 new illegal settler units in the occupied West Bank. The construction will further consolidate the Zionist presence in the Palestinian territory of the West Bank and the barriers to the creation of a Palestinian state. The announcement has already raised tensions between the Naftali Bennett government and the Biden administration, which claim it opposes activity that makes it harder to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by establishing a Palestinian state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. This is the largest number of new settler homes approved since the inauguration of Bennett's government in June. And the Israeli regime continued to desecrate Palestinian graves in occupied East Jerusalem on Wednesday. Israeli police kicked Palestinians attempting to protect the graves of their relatives out of the Al-Yusufiya cemetery near the Lions Gate entrance to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem as the construction of the Jewish National Park continues. Many graves have been bulldozed, causing outrage. The cemetery, located next to the walls surrounding the Old City, is one of the oldest Muslim graveyards in occupied Jerusalem.
They have entered this area and violated the sanctity of the graves and martyrs. We appeal to all the city's institutions to support this position, our position, and stand by the right that we defend, and protect these graves.
It is a chilling feeling. I had to move bones around so that I could reach my son's grave. They bulldoze several graves here. They have no consideration for the dead or their sanctity.
In another act of provocation, the Israeli armies conducted military exercises in the occupied Syrian Golan Heights. The move comes as Israel holds its largest ever Air Force exercise this week, with the participation of several countries, including the United Arab Emirates, with whom it normalized ties last year. Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes on Syria from the occupied Golan Heights throughout the Western-imposed terrorist war in the country. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett recently said the Golan Heights is Israeli, full stop, despite the fact that Israel's occupation and later annexation of the Syrian territory is not internationally recognized. We move on to other topics. Addressing the UN Security Council, the representative for Sudan called on the international community to continue support the population of the country following Monday's coup. Meanwhile, the permanent representative of neighboring South Sudan underlined the setback of the move represented to improve bilateral relations.
Delegations have expressed their concerns as to what is currently happening in Sudan, and while understanding their concerns, we would reiterate the need for the international community and the Security Council more specifically to continue providing its support for the people of Sudan at this very important moment, which is a crossroads, in order to bring together the positions of the different Sudanese parties, civilians or military.
The rapprochement between Sudan and South Sudan, it happened because of the system that was in Khartoum after the revolution. That system is no longer there since Monday. So although we are hoping things will continue, sadly it will take time.
And the African Union said Wednesday it had suspended Sudan from the bloc until civilian rule in the country is restored. The continent-wide bloc said it strongly condemns the seizure of power by the military, which it described as unconstitutional. Sudan is suspended from all AU activities until the effective restoration of the civilian-led transitional authority. Later, the World Bank also decided to suspend aid to Sudan. A number of Western powers have called for an urgent meeting with ousted Prime Minister Abdel Hamdok, saying they'll still recognize him and his cabinet as the constitutional leaders of Sudan. The AU previously suspended Sudan in June 2019 after pro-democracy protesters demanding civilian rule were gunned down outside army headquarters in Khartoum. And Iran hosted a meeting of Afghanistan's 6 neighboring countries on Wednesday to determine a roadmap following the withdrawal of U.S. troops and the Taliban's return to power. Iranian authorities stated that the main goal of the one-day conference was to emphasize the call for the formation of an inclusive government in Afghanistan. The conference in Tehran brought together the foreign ministers of Iran, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, joined by their counterparts from China and Russia via video link. Iranian First Vice President Mohammad Mokbar inaugurated the meeting, stressing that the defeat of the United States policies in Afghanistan does not mean that the U.S. is abandoning its destructive policies across the region. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also addressed the meeting, noting that Afghanistan is facing an epic humanitarian crisis, which demands immediate action.
It is essential that the Taliban adopts a friendly approach towards its neighbors and takes the necessary measures to assure that there is no threat to their neighbors from Afghanistan. The Islamic Republic of Iran insists on the establishment of an inclusive government with the presence of effective participation of all ethnic and religious groups in Afghanistan, based on inter-Afghan dialogue without the intervention of foreign actors. If no solution is found as soon as possible to control and manage the economic crisis in Afghanistan, the crisis will certainly move beyond the borders of Afghanistan and affect its neighbors and the world.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, you can join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.